let's get into day 3 of 3 days to client ready, because we all want happy clients, a thriving business, and more time back in our day, right? So if you have not been here the last couple of days, I'm Taryn Rachelle. I am the community and partnership leader here at Dubsado, but I'm also a business owner myself. I am a mom of 2. I'm a wife. I'm a softball coach. I started my business back in right before 2020 as a social media manager. And after a year, I moved into offering done-for-you system builds for the wedding and event industry. With that pivot this year, I am now a keynote speaker, podcast, and event host. And between my experience setting up Dubsado builds, charging a minimum of $5,000 that help my clients scale their business, take maternity leaves, and raise their prices, and so much more, to now speaking on stages in front of hundreds of people, teaching them how you can create a thriving business without sacrificing your time. This has all been possible because my systems and every process I put into place are always ready for me to get booked and paid. And that's what I'm here to help you guys do during this week. So over these 3 days, we have been covering some very key parts of the client experience to get you guys client ready. On Monday, we talked all about the inquiry process. Yesterday, we talked about booking and getting those paid notifications on your brand new Dubsado mobile app. And today, we are going to be covering onboarding. Just want to give you guys a final reminder of office hours, which is at 11:15 Pacific Standard Time, live on Zoom. The link will be put in the chat if you're watching live after the webinar. So make sure you come. This is a great time for you to ask your questions specifically to Trevor and or myself, and we will help you with anything you have. No question is too small, too big. We've been sharing screens, talking about so many different ways to do things within Dubsado and to help you along the way with your business. So we hope to see you there today for the last office hours. So let's get into onboarding for lasting impressions. Onboarding is more than a client gift. And when you take the time to create an efficient onboarding process, you'll be setting you and your clients up for major success. I love a good client gift. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. But like I just said, onboarding is way more than that. It is a specific time that you can really set you and your clients up for success for the time that you're working together and after that time, to make sure that they are wanting to give reviews and also refer you to other people. What truly is an onboarding process? If you look this up on Google, it would tell you that a client onboarding process is a way to welcome your clients into your business, but it's more than a welcome. It's a time to make sure that you and your clients are prepared to work together. It is truly the ideal time for you to feel confident in delivering the most amazing experience that will leave your clients raving about you and coming back for more services. If you're watching live, put in the chat how many of you want clients that are going to rave about your business, and not just rave about it to you. They're going to tell other people. They're going to tell other people and get referrals to you. By the middle point of my business, most of my business became referral based. I didn't necessarily have to market a ton because my clients marketed for me. And that is because of an elevated client experience. So let me know in the chat if you want that and that is something that you are craving in your business. I see yes, absolutely, 100%. I am so excited for you guys and to really help you along this journey. So 4 key things that onboarding should really do when you're going through this process. 1 is to show your excitement and thanks. Yes, onboarding is not just about client gifts and appreciation, but it is a great addition to your process. Your clients just invested in you. So make sure you show thanks in some way. Even a handwritten card goes a long way. I think there is a big misconception that client gifts need to be this big price tag. You need to send them these huge items and everything like that. And yes, I feel like there is a time and place for those things depending on the investment level, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but it doesn't always have to be that way. My clients have loved just receiving cards from me when it comes to them booking with me or on their birthdays or on anniversaries. Those things, it just elevates that client experience. And especially if you're sending things after the point of working with them, like for a birthday, for example, that shows that they were just not someone that you cared about when they were a paying client. You care about them post project, post working with them. And that's what's going to want them to shout you from the rooftops, and also have people coming to you from them, and also maybe having them come back for more services if that is the way your business model is set up. Next is going to be to prepare your clients and answer questions. We want to make sure that clients are not confused, especially at the beginning of working with you. They should feel so confident in their decision to invest in you by the level of care you give them post booking. We do not want them to be sitting there like, what did I just do? Or, really second guessing that investment that they made, mainly because they're just confused. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what's next. They don't know what to expect. And we don't want them to just get a certain level of care when they were being a booking client, as opposed to once they have paid and then the experience falls off. It should elevate, especially when they become a paying client. Next is to help receive any information that you need. This is the time to get any pre-work out of the way so you're not waiting on information from your clients. If you have past clients that you have worked with, look at those past projects and see if there was anything that would have been helpful to have received before working with that client. Have you ever gone into a project and you're like, gosh, this little area is taking so long and I wish I would have received this information beforehand. An example for me is I offer Dubsado builds, and a big part of Dubsado builds was mapping out workflows. I used to go into mapping out workflows with not a lot of information beforehand from my clients, and our workflow mapping sessions would take over 2 hours. I allotted for that amount of time because I worked with the wedding and event industry, so they usually had a lot of workflows. But going past that and way past that and not even fully finishing all the workflows during the mapping session was not ideal for me. And it wasn't ideal for the clients because they probably just didn't feel like maybe I knew what I was doing or that their workflows were going to be set up for success. And so I started to audit why I was feeling this way going into the process. And it was because I didn't get information beforehand. So then I changed my onboarding process to gather my clients' ideal client journeys. No, I'm not asking them for every trigger and action and everything because they may not know what those mean in Dubsado language. But I just want to know, hey, when a lead comes in, what would you ideally like to see happen? And I'd have them write that out for me in a document I made for them. And then I would receive that and I would plug it into my workflow builder and it was prepped. So then during our call, we were just editing, refining, and making sure it was perfect. And then instead of 2 hours, my workflow mapping sessions went down to 1 hour. And that was so great for my time and also my clients' time. And last is going to be to set expectations and boundaries. Boundaries are so important, especially as service providers. One of the reasons why boundaries get crossed is because they are not communicated in the first place. Using onboarding to share office hours, methods of communication, and other boundaries that are important to you and your business is so crucial and is a great time to do so. How many of you guys that are watching this live and you are watching the replay, just raise your hand to yourself. But how many of you guys that are watching live, put in the chat, do you feel like your boundaries have ever been crossed by a client? Maybe they are texting you late at night. Please don't give your clients your phone numbers. This is something I'm like very against. Use a different form of communication, but maybe they are messaging you at late hours of the night, or they are asking for more edits and revisions past the point of when you offer edits and revisions. How many of you guys have ever had boundaries crossed by clients? And how did that make you feel? I hear, oh yeah, constantly. Unfortunately, yes, it's led to a lot of changes in my process. And that's exactly what should happen. If you are having boundaries crossed and expectations are not met, we need to change something. It doesn't need to stay that way. We own our own businesses. I always say, like, I joke to myself, like, oh, like, my boss is having me work so hard. I got to go look in the mirror because my boss is myself. Okay. You are in charge of your business. So make sure if you are feeling like my boundaries are getting crossed, you need to go have a conversation with your boss, AKA yourself, and figure out why that's happening. What are you not doing to make sure that your boundaries aren't getting crossed and that expectations are met from your clients, and also that you are holding up the end of the bargain of the boundaries that you are setting? Onboarding does not need to be overwhelming, especially when it is streamlined. Onboarding is a huge part of the client experience, and one that should have a very high level of detail because it's going to, again, set you and your clients up for success. But a lot of people get overwhelmed when it comes to client onboarding because they feel like there's so much that they have to do. There's so much prep work that goes into working with a client. And yes, there can be some prep work when you are getting things set up to be automated. But once they are automated and streamlined, it doesn't need to feel that way. It doesn't need to feel overwhelming for you, and it doesn't need to be overwhelming for your client, because you should be communicating what's going to be happening in your onboarding process, which we're going to be covering in a second. So it just takes two things. These are two crucial things that go into making sure that you can set up your onboarding process for success. One is going to be knowing the end result of someone working with you. A lot of times people think, okay, so just like we've done in this webinar series, we talked about the inquiry, we talked about the booking process, and now we talked about onboarding. So I'm kind of walking you through these steps in the journey. So it makes sense to go, 1, 2, 3. When we get to the onboarding phase, to make sure that we are onboarding correctly and that is going to set us and our clients up for success, I want you guys to actually work backwards. I want you to look at your service that you're offering and what is that end result? Is it a website and branding completed? Is it wedding photography? They're getting their photos delivered in a gallery. What is that end result? And work your process backwards of what that's going to look like. So what you're going to do in this scenario is you're going to look at what's everything you're going to be doing mid-project, and that's going to help you create your project timeline that you can put in a project management tool like Notion or Trello or ClickUp. But then when we're looking at the onboarding process, why we work backwards is if you look at all the deliverables you have, this is where you're going to have those like red flags or those like alerts going off of like, wow, I have this step in my process when I'm working with someone, but in order to have this step work right, I need to have this happen in onboarding. I need to make sure that I'm gathering this information from a client. For me, like I set up, client portals, design forms in Dubsado, and I made them very on brand. So in order for me to do that, what do you think I needed? Their branding. So that's something that I knew I needed because I worked backwards. And so I was like, okay, I need to make sure I'm gathering their branding in onboarding. So I'm not asking that of them during the project, which is going to slow things down. Again, we want to work smarter, not harder. And then next is going to be to truly know the experience that you want to provide. When you think about the client experience that you want to provide your clients, what does that look like? They are now a paying client. How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to know? What do you want them to be the most excited about? And this is a very, very important part. In order to create a client experience that you will actually provide, it needs to be the one that you want to provide. So what I mean by this is it is very easy to get shiny object syndrome, as a service provider. Let me know in the chat if you're watching live if you have ever been victim to the shiny object syndrome. Sometimes it is inevitable. I think that shiny object syndrome is not bad. I think it is what you do with it when you get it that determines the success level of it. So I always say if you get an idea, you see something somewhere, put it on the shelf and circle back to it and make sure that it aligns with your business and what you want to do, including if you see something in someone else's onboarding process, it does not mean that you need to be the one to actually do that in your onboarding process. Does that make sense for your client? Does that make sense for you and your time? So you want to make sure that any client experience that you create is that one that you want to do, one that makes sense for your business and for your clients, and not just because it is what you see Susie doing down the street. You want to make sure that it is right for you. So how do you currently feel about your onboarding process? I want you guys to rate yourself 1 to 5, 5 being amazing. Like if Taryn looked at my onboarding process, she would be so impressed. And a 1 being I need some work, AKA what onboarding process? I want you guys to rate yourself. So if you're watching the replay, write this down of what your number is. And then if you are watching this live, put in the chat for me what is your current level. So I see a lot of 2s, 3s, some 1s, 0. I need to create one, 3.5. I love that in between there. You're like, it's not that bad, but it's not that amazing. I'm totally like that. I'm like, I'll give myself a half rating on things. But I, 1, appreciate you guys for being honest because it shows that you want to elevate your client experience. And I want you guys to just keep that number written down. Even if you're watching this live and you put it in the chat, write it down somewhere, because I want you guys to reflect once you have created an onboarding process that you love and it is a 5, and look at where you started, because I'm all about celebrating wins. I want you guys to feel so accomplished in anything you do, especially in your systems, because systems set the foundation for so much in your business. And when you take the time to do it, you're going to feel so much better. You're going to feel such a sense of relief, mainly because you're going to have more time, but also because you're going to have really happy clients. And also because happy clients, really elevated client experience equals elevating your pricing and raising those prices. So I'm really excited for you guys. And thank you for being here for me to help you along the way. So you guys remember these 4 that we talked about before. I'm going to walk you through some ways that we can elevate them through your onboarding process. So first, we're going to talk about ways to show excitement and thanks through your onboarding process. When someone books with you, they should immediately receive communication. My personal preference is by email. And this is great to use through Dubsado, through your CRM, of when they immediately book with you, they should be getting something. They should know that they just booked. They should see at your level of excitement that they are now a paying client, that they just made an investment in you. Maybe they're a returning client and you're so excited that they are coming back to you. So we want them to get that immediate excitement, and that happens through automations, because we are on the go. Someone could be booking with you in the middle of the night, and we don't want to, be up at 2 a.m. sending an email out, but your workflows can do that. Your automations can do that. So even though we don't need to be sitting there manually doing something like being excited that someone just booked with us, our automations can do that for us. Next is going to be to get to know them as a person, not just about their business. By doing this, it's going to show that you truly care about them and not just their investment. So what I mean by this is when you go through an onboarding process, there's a couple reasons why it's really important to get to know someone as a person. Yes, it's so they can tell that you truly care about them, but it also helps you figure out how to work with this person, because everybody is different. And even if you have a really great, way of drawing in your ideal clients that are all pretty similar, they're all still going to be different. So it's really great to learn about their communication styles. If you guys are into like Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or anything like that, learning those things so you can help and figure out better ways to communicate with them. Because if you do that, your time of working with them is going to be that much better. One of my favorite things that I added into my onboarding process was I literally asked them what their level of communication they wanted to receive. Did they want to have over communication? Did they just want to know about when things were completed? Did they just want like the bare minimum of client communication? It was really helpful for me to see that because I had scenarios in the past where I had a lot of clients that didn't really need a lot of communication. So that's just what I was used to doing. And then I got a client in that wanted over communication, but didn't really specify that to me until she wasn't getting it. And then I was like, oh, like I feel bad. Like I wasn't giving her the level of experience that she wanted. And so I added that question into my onboarding process so that that never happened again. It was only one client that happened with, but I never wanted to go through that again. I never wanted one of my clients to feel that way again. So it was such a great way to really figure out how people want to be communicated with. And by doing that, I was able to make sure that I was giving the same level of experience to all my clients, even if they had different communication styles. And last is going to be that, yes, we're going to be talking about client gifting, but you do not always have to break the bank to say thanks. So I'm going to give you guys some tips on client gifting that I incorporated into my business to really help you figure out ways to include this if you choose to in your client experience. So for me, I love client gifts. I think it is a really great way to show appreciation and thanks and excitement to your clients. But like I said here, you don't have to break the bank. So what I personally did for my client gifting is I created a tier program. So that way for myself and for my assistant, we know exactly, depending on what the investment was, what level of client gift we were going to be sending. So if it was from this amount of money to this amount of money, we sent a card and a Starbucks gift card. I personally use BoxFox for my client gifts. I know we love BoxFox here at Dubsado. So that's Box, just BOX, and then Fox like the animal. And it is a really great tool to create client gifts that are more personalized because you are designing what goes in the box. They have some like pre-made boxes, but I personally like to customize them to fit my client, not myself. So in my onboarding forms, I ask them, do you prefer stationery? Do you prefer snacks? Do you prefer self-care items? So then I could customize the box to fit what they would actually use. And then I also love that I could figure out their brand colors and incorporate that into their client gift. So I made their gift match them, not me. If you make branded gifts that have your logo and stuff like that, I think that's great too. For me personally, I wanted it to be about them because I wanted them to want to use those items maybe in brand photos or on their stories and things like that. So I wanted it to match their brand. So what I would recommend if you're just getting started with client gifting is to create some kind of tier program of the different investments. If you have different tiers of pricing, what would you send as a client gift for those different pricing points? And then that will help you make sure that your pricing is right for what you're offering. And you're not like sending a $400 gift to someone when their investment's $600 and then no, you just have a $200 profit before you even add in any other investments or anything else that you have to pay. So we want to make sure that the cost of the gift matches the cost of the investment that someone made with us. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys if you guys are getting started on client gifting. And any questions on that we can answer in the Q&A time, and especially during office hours. We do not want our clients to feel excitement ends now that they have swiped their credit card. I have heard this a lot in the online space of people where they're like, I booked with someone and then it was just like crickets, or it was like they were so excited and so much communication. And now I just feel like that was happening because they wanted me to book with them. And now that I have booked with them, it just doesn't feel like I'm getting the same level of experience. Like I said, when someone's booking, the experience should go up. It should never go down because that person's going to feel buyer's remorse and they're definitely not going to want to send a testimonial or refer you back to people. So you want to make sure that excitement is going up, especially after they book. So, ways to prepare and answer questions through onboarding. So, first is to have a consistent place that communication happens. I would definitely recommend to not have communication in all different areas. So, talking in email, talking on Instagram DMs, texting, in Slack, like all of those things, you're losing communication, you can't find it. Then you feel like your boundaries are getting crossed because they're texting you, but you've already started texting them. So, how would they know? Figure out a consistent place that you want to communicate and have that be pretty much the only place that you communicate. For me, I love Slack. I think it is a great tool for client communication, mainly because of how organized it is and how easy you can find previous communication in there. They've been adding so many different tools inside of that platform, and I really enjoy it. So that's where all of my past client communication and then any communication with my team or anything happens is in Slack. I never give out my client's phone or my phone number to clients. A lot of my clients end up becoming friends. And then in that case, then we do text, but it's on a friendly basis. It's not about business. And then email communication, I pretty much only have that for when it comes to automated emails that are going through Dubsado or anything that is, something that's before someone's a client or anything like that, or someone that's not on my team. I still use email. I use Gmail for my email. But I don't email back and forth 24/7. I know it really depends on your clientele. So if you have maybe an older clientele that doesn't use Slack or know how to use Slack, that may be a little bit harder to get them over into there, but figure out a consistent place that you communicate. That's like the biggest thing, and have that be exactly where you communicate at. And wherever that is, it needs to be organized. So if you use your email for client communication, please do not have 50,000 emails that are unread in your inbox because you're going to miss stuff from clients. You're going to miss stuff from leads. So make sure no matter where you communicate, it's organized. Next is going to be to keep track of commonly asked questions and share those via written or video format for your clients to refer back to. If you get the same questions over and over and over, those need to be turned into frequently asked questions. And a great thing to add into your onboarding process is a pre-recorded video or written format of those frequently asked questions. And then that way you can send that video or that written content to your clients that they can always refer back to. So if you know that question's in there, you can be like, oh, hey, I covered this in that onboarding video. Have you had a chance to check it out? And if they're like, oh, yes, I did, I still have this question on this, then answer that for them. And then look at your video or your written content and make sure that it is actually answering the questions and that it is not missing any details. And last is going to be to give them an opportunity to ask questions without them feeling like they're a burden to you. Questions help you elevate your client experience even more. When clients ask questions, it allows you to really understand where they are at and where they want to go. Please, please, please do not let your clients feel like a burden for asking questions. They're investing in you. They are, maybe this is their first time investing or the first time investing in this particular service. I know when I first started investing in my business, I was pretty scared. I was like, oh, like I worked so hard for this and now I'm going to like give this money away. Should I just do it myself? But then, I was very intentional on who I hired for certain things, that they had a level of communication that I needed, that they were going to be there to answer my questions. So if you're telling people that they can ask questions, I always say like my DMs are always open. If your DMs are always open to people like your community, then actually answer them. You know what I mean? Like, don't make people feel like a burden for reaching out to you. And you want to really understand that the client questions that you get really help you see, okay, where are they at right now? And what do they want to get at the end of working with me? If you're a photographer and you have a client that's really asking about, the lighting and the colors, or, the deliverables on how the photos are coming, and because, they want to put these into canvases, like those are things that you really want to pick up on. And those are really great questions, because that is going to help you see, okay, we need to make sure we have these specific shots, or that we are shooting in this specific lighting, because they want to print these in canvases. So it's really important to listen to those questions and take note of them, and don't just write them off. Next is going to be ways to show or ways to receive information needed through your onboarding process. So make sure your clients are aware of how much information they will need to provide during onboarding. This is very, very, very important, because we want to make sure that our clients are aware of the pre-work that they are receiving. I will say I am definitely guilty of this. When I first started my business, is that I put in so much onboarding information and I wasn't fully preparing my clients. And they were pretty overwhelmed, because I just didn't let them know what I needed and why I needed the information. It was still necessary, but I just didn't prepare them. So when they're prepared, it's going to be easy for them to complete and to ask the appropriate questions. And then I was able to see, okay, am I giving them enough time to complete this pre-work? Or am I not giving them enough time to complete it? And that's why they're overwhelmed. Next is going to be to provide a clear and organized way to gather information, especially when there's a lot for clients to complete. This is where utilizing forms in Dubsado really comes into play, because it's all in one place. We're not gathering information in a Google form and then, a type form, and then texting them, and then getting stuff in Slack. Like, if you have specific information that you're going to need, put these into written documents that they're going to complete for you. Yes, there's going to be questions here and there, but those are one-off questions. But if those questions are happening a lot, or you're realizing a trend in information you're needing, then I really want you guys to think about, okay, should I add this into my onboarding form? These forms you create for your clients should be like living and breathing documents. Like, you should go back in and add in questions as they become more frequently asked questions into your onboarding form. So you're not having to answer them just one off or gather this information here and there. You can get it all in one form. And then next is going to be adding in kickoff calls or onboarding calls. Can be a great way to make sure there is not confusion and to hear their answers to questions that you may have for your clients. So kickoff calls and onboarding calls are so great, because what people write sometimes is not actually fully what they would say if you were talking. So, I mean, look at this slide deck, for example. I'm putting little like bullet notes in here and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, this is like what I'm going to talk about, but obviously I'm explaining more because I'm verbally talking about it. So that can sometimes be the same when people are filling out a form. So what they say when they are filling it out may not be exactly fully what they mean or they feel, or you may not get all the information that would be really helpful. So that is where a kickoff call or an onboarding call can really be helpful. Or also, if there's some maybe you have a really lengthy onboarding form, and that's okay. Some businesses really need that. Maybe you can offer, when people need it, to get on a call with you to go over some questions in there, because I'd rather answer those questions for people than them put one-word answers or not understand it. And then I don't know that till we're mid-project. Feeling prepared working with clients is important, but them feeling prepared is even more important, because then they're going to feel like they made the right investment in you. And last is going to be to set expectations and boundaries. So I want you guys to first feel okay with sharing expectations and boundaries with your clients. Don't feel ashamed or worried about them. There is nothing wrong with boundaries. There is nothing wrong with having office hours. There is nothing wrong with you saying that you don't work on the weekends. For me, I got to a point in my business where I didn't do any client calls on Mondays or Fridays. Those became my CEO days. And my clients were okay with that because I set those expectations from the beginning. And that allowed me to really spend intentional time on my business and then very intentional time with my clients Tuesday through Thursday. So it's okay to set those. You just need to communicate them and feel okay with communicating with them. And then you have to stick to your own boundaries. If you go outside of them, it can cause confusion and overwhelm for you and for your clients. We don't want to say that our office hours are till, 4 p.m. And then here we are responding to emails at 8 o'clock. Yes, if there's like an emergency situation, like case by case scenario. But for me, I mean, emergency has got to be pretty big. But you really want to stick to your boundaries and feel like, you can do that, because then if we go past them, how do we expect our clients to respect the boundaries if we are going past them? It's going to cause so much confusion, and then you're going to be very overwhelmed and like, well, why is my client now messaging me at 8, 9 o'clock every single day? Well, it's probably because you responded at 8 o'clock on a day, and then they feel like it's okay to do that. And next is going to be to automate as much of your onboarding process as possible, which allows you to communicate and keep boundaries in place. So if you have emails that are going out, maybe even outside of office hours, you can always, re-put your office hours at the bottom of emails, and let them know that, hey, if I receive a reply back outside of these office hours, I will get back the next business day. It is totally okay to put that in your emails. So then they feel like, okay, I'm like seen and heard. I can still write her an email, but she'll get back to me the next day. And that is totally okay. So, just figure out ways that you can automate your process so then your boundaries can still be kept, because you can only expect people to respect your boundaries if you express your boundaries to them. So I have Dubsado to thank for a seamless onboarding process that I created when I was working one-on-one with clients. And even now, hosting events and speaking, I still use Dubsado. I use it for my podcast. And I am able to onboard so seamlessly and have to do very minimal of the work inside of the platform because I have so much of it automated. And so I want to walk you guys through some of the tools you can use in there. So first is going to be the client portal. So this is a one place to find everything. To help your clients through onboarding, use the client portal may be just what you need. And this can be a one-stop shop for your clients to be able to find forms, invoices, contracts, and communication. You can customize the look of the portal to fit your brand so that it feels like an extension of your website. Pro tip, if you can see these visuals here, you see how they're flashing. This was a portal build that I did for a photo booth company. And so we wanted it to look like photos flashing. And so you can actually upload video headers into your client portal by creating GIFs and uploading them. So if you go into Canva, for example, you can actually create a video into a GIF, which is how I created these. And then I designed a banner, plugged those GIFs in, downloaded it as a GIF, and then uploaded it into the client portal to give that photo flashing element. To design what you want the colors to look like in the client portal, you'll just go into settings and go into client portal, and then you can edit what you have the tab for projects to say, what colors you want in there, if you want your logo to show. And then you also want to make sure you are setting up a design for mobile because it's going to show up differently on mobile. So you will see the design I created for this client looks a little bit different on mobile. And that is because a phone is smaller than a computer. And so you want to make sure that it's formatted correctly. Next is going to be subcontracts. This is like one of my favorite like secret weapons that I use when it comes to client expectations, and that is to send subcontracts. I want to know in the chat and be very honest. You don't have to say that you always do this, but how many of you guys have skimmed over a contract or barely read it and still signed it? Please let me know in the chat if this is you. Again, no shame. We have all been there. I will say I have been there. But let me know if you guys have done this, because this is very common. And I want you guys to remember that even if you have in your contract what your expectations are or what your boundaries are, a lot of times people will skim through contracts. We don't want that to happen, but it will. Yes, they are still legally binding, but it can still cause so much confusion or conflict that we do not want. So what I incorporated into my business is utilizing subcontracts. In Dubsado, you can only send one contract per project, but you can send as many subcontracts as you want. So I use the sub agreements to create a client expectations and like a boundaries kind of document. So I go over our communication guidelines, what feedback and revisions look like, and it's a very short form compared to my extremely long contract. And after every section, I have them initial and then have them sign it too. So in my process, my clients did not get any onboarding forms, calls, or anything until I got this form signed and back. My workflow did not continue until this form was signed. So that is a really great way to add into your process, just a subtle reminder, and it's not pushy. Like, all of my clients love this, and so many of my clients actually incorporated this into their process because they had so many times of people not actually reading contracts and just signing them. People in the comments, it's me, I'm guilty, unfortunately, yes. So it happens, and just know that that could be what's going on with your clients, and there are ways to still set them up for success and you. Next is going to be automated workflows that are fast and streamlined. Yes, workflows can take some time to set up and effort, but when they are, you will save so much time because it's going to elevate your client experience, especially during onboarding. Using workflows keep your clients up to date on what they need to complete for you, sends them information, sets them up for success, all while most of it is happening automatically. So this is an example of like an actual workflow that I used to have when I offered Dubsado builds. And I would say about like 99% of my onboarding process was completely automated through my workflow. The only things I had to do was update the dates on my scheduler to be during the project windows. So they only book their calls during those project times, which if you have questions on how to do that, definitely come to office hours if you're watching this live, and I can walk you through that. But I had to do that. And then we added a link to their Google Drive folder to their custom app fields, which I'm going to talk about in a second. That was pretty much it. Everything else was just the workflow running. The client was scheduling things, filling out their forms. Everything was happening automatically through workflows. Yes, this took some time. Yes, this took some trial and error. Yes, I had to update this here and there when I needed to change something in my process, but I still saved so much time by setting this up in the first place. And next is going to be questionnaires. Gather all needed information. Using Dubsado forms to gather information allows you to keep everything in one place and also use automations to send and receive them. Your forms can be as detailed and as branded as you need, and you can use one form to gather all information, or if your forms are really long, you can create different ones to break up the process. Or if you need to send one during one point of the project and then a different one during another form of the project, then you can do so. So this is an example here of just an onboarding form. Mine was very long and extensive for my clients, but it was for a reason. We were building out their entire Dubsado. I needed a lot of information. But one thing I made sure to do, and this is a very big tip for you guys, is if you have a very long form that a client is filling out, like a little bit down in the form multiple times, put a note that says to remind them to save their draft, because it will not save their draft automatically. So put a little note there. I would have like little gifts, because I'm a gift queen, of someone that was like, wait, stop. And then it was like, have you saved your form lately? So then they don't fill out all this information and then it's all gone, because I've been there before and it is so sad. And I never want my clients to go through that. And now we're going to gather even more information with custom field buttons. This is a pro tip. And again, something if you're watching live, we can cover during office hours. But within forms and emails, you can use buttons that click to outside links. And you can add these links in without even going into the form or the email. By using custom map fields, you can add these links to their project and they will auto-populate in these buttons. This is great for outside tools like Google Drive folders. So for an example, I had to gather all their branding information. So I gathered their logos, brand colors, all those things like brand guidelines, and it all went into a Google Drive folder. And in that Drive folder, I had subfolders for like branding. You guys, I'm a systems person. Everything was organized. And so I created custom map fields inside of my settings that were where I could put those links in their project. So that picture on the left-hand side, this is edit project details for map fields. This is within the client's project. So there's certain fields that I have created, and that's where I would populate that link. And then that map field, smart field that's in the brackets, is what is actually in the link section of that button that says upload logo. So when they clicked on that, it would take them to the Google Drive folder, as opposed to using the upload field inside of Dubsado. I prefer to do it this way. If you're gathering a ton of information from someone, sometimes using a separate folder is helpful, but you can still do it all within one form. And it makes it so easy. And my clients love this process. And then schedulers. Allow your clients to book your time. By using Dubsado Scheduler, you can use workflows to send these appointments to your clients to book. During onboarding, this will help keep things streamlined and in one place as these appointments show up in their client portal. Pro tip, you can use group schedulers to put all calls that a client needs to book with you for their project in one place to be sent at one time. So schedulers are so great because you can send them within workflows. You can do things when a scheduler is booked. It can trigger something in a workflow. When an appointment has ended, you can do something. So after I had my vibe checks, which is a form of my discovery calls, I would send an automated email 30 minutes after the appointment had ended in case it went a little bit over. And it was just like, thank you for your time. I'll be in touch with next steps. And that went out automatically after the appointment had ended because I sent it through a workflow. And then the grouped schedulers, again, if you're watching this live, come to office hours. I can cover this a little bit, but you can put schedulers together. And then when they go to book this, it's going to show all the different calls they need to schedule in one area. So for me, I sent my clients every single call they needed to book for their entire project at once because I like to get them all on my calendar. It was helpful for my clients to have them all on their calendar. So then we didn't get time for the call and they're like, I don't have any availability this week. And I'm like, well, that is really difficult for me because now we're going to have to do this call outside of the project window. So again, boundaries and everything. That's how I kept everything in my time frames. I am sure you all want happy clients who not only love working with you, but who want to shout you from the rooftops and come back for more services. If that's you, put me in the chat. If you're watching this live, I'm sure you're like, or you're watching the replay, I'm sure you're like screaming, that's me. But if you're watching live, definitely put in the chat. I would love to hear that from you guys. Your client deserves a clear onboarding process, and so do you. Streamlined onboarding does not just help your clients, it helps you. It helps avoid burnout by providing a level of experience without overwhelm. Now let's get you ready to set this up for yourself. I want you to write out your ideal journey that you want your clients to take when they're getting onboarded through your process. Audit your current process and see if it aligns with your ideal process. If not, refine it. See how many manual steps you are doing and if any of those can now be automated. Review past onboarding experiences or mid working with clients and see if there's anything that should have happened in onboarding to make it easier. And once you have your new process, run yourself through it as if you were a client to look for errors or changes that need to be made. That way you catch them and not your clients. Client onboarding is the first experience as your client. Start it off strong so that they are excited for what is to come. You got this. And once you have it set up, onboarding will be a breeze for you and your clients. I want to let you guys know that clients do notice. These are real testimonials for some of my past clients. And you will see in here that they were talking about the experience. Yes, they were excited that their Dubsado was set up. They were excited that they had ClickUp set up. They were excited that their workflows were running efficiently. But what all three of these testimonials have in common is they're talking about the level of experience that they received. You will even see on Bianca's that she was looking for someone that was cheaper than I was. Like I said, in day one, I think I was at the very high end of Dubsado builds when I stopped offering them. And she still went with me anyways. And she literally says at the end, just give her your money now. You won't regret it. Even though I was more expensive, she came to me because of the experience I provide and because I knew her niche. So thank you guys so much. This week has been incredible. I know today went a little bit longer, but client onboarding is so important. And I wanted to make sure there was a lot of information in here for you. If you are catching this live, definitely come to office hours. I'm excited to walk you guys through anything that you guys have questions on between me and Trevor. And now I will head back over with Trevor to see if we want to get into a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Taryn, for that. That was, again, wonderful. 3 fantastic days of webinars. I don't know how you do it. Just firing.
I love it.
Fantastic. You're really good at it. All right. So we've got a couple of questions here in the Q&A, and most of them actually revolved around some of the earlier stuff we talked about, which was sending client gifts. So let's just go through these for now. Obviously, anybody who's still here in the webinar in the chat, if you have questions as we're talking, please feel free to add them to the Q&A or in the chat. We'll get to them. And if not, we can always talk about them in office hours. But Sarah was asking, what do you recommend as a gift card amount for something like Starbucks, right? So this to me tells me that she's looking at maybe a lower, priced gift. But what were your ideas for something like a gift card for Starbucks, for example?
Yeah, so my favorite thing to do for this is if you're doing a lower end gift, and especially if you do an onboarding call, this is like a really great way to like elevate your client experience, is to make sure that you send out your thank you card, or if you're doing it virtually, that helps too. You can send a Starbucks gift card virtually, is to send it before you have your onboarding call with them. And so what I did, if I had like a lower end service and I was getting on a call or like a strategy session, for example, I sent them that Starbucks gift card. I'm like, here's a Starbucks gift card for you to go get a coffee so you have the energy for our call together. So I just had it be about like $10 or so, or $15 in case they wanted some egg bites or something too. But it doesn't have to be anything crazy. But I would just send that. And then that way it was like, I didn't feel bad that it was a lower amount, but then it like made the experience better for them, because I'm like, I'm trying to get you fueled so that you're ready for this call with me. And they love that. So doing something like that would be great. If you're not getting on a call with them, still like $10, $15 is totally fine. Like, an average Starbucks is like about like $6, $8 or so, maybe more. I don't know. But, it depends on what you're getting, but you don't have to do anything too crazy, especially for a lower end service.
Sweet. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if I was a client, I'd be like, yeah, let's get pumped up, get some coffee in my system to get ready for the call. I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
All right. Kim was asking if you would share your pricing tiers for your gifts when you were working. I'm not sure if you have that info still handy or accessible.
Oh,
but
gosh.
Did you have them memorized?
If you can come to office hours, I will hunt for them. I moved from ClickUp to Notion, and ClickUp has like all my old stuff from when I did system builds, and I know I have it in there. And I can share that there. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it was, anything that was a strategy session or anything like that. I did more of like a gift card or anything. Anyone that was doing like a system build with me, which, at the time of starting, my system build started at around like $2,000. So anything like above that, I was giving like an actual like gift. So I was using like BoxFox or something like that. But then I had strategy sessions, and then I did system builds was like my different services, which is how I differentiated them. But I had like an actual like amount tier that I can hunt for, and I can give that to you guys at office hours.
Cool. We're going to jump to a really recent question asked by Christy, just because it's kind of on the same topic here. But she was asking if you automate your gifts, or is it like completely hands off, or do you personalize it with an actual handwritten note?
So it's kind of handwritten, but okay, well, it depends on like if you're doing the Starbucks gift card and like you're writing a card, I wrote those. And then I like to put the card in there and send it off to my clients. You can do it virtually if you prefer to, but that's just what I like to do. I just got like a huge pack of thank you cards, and then I just like grabbed one of those, put a stamp on it, and sent it out. Through BoxFox, what like me at the time of when it was just me, I would go through and look at my client's branding, build it out. And then BoxFox has a service, it's included in their boxes, where you can add a card, and then you can write what you want the card to say, and they will handwrite it. So it's not printed, it is actually handwritten by them. So I went about it that way. So that's what I did. And then when I did have a team member, I walked through and created an SOP, which is a standard operating procedure of how I create client gifts. I created a video on how I go about it. And then my assistant was able to send out client gifts. She would still send them to me just to be like, hey, does this look about right? Of something you would send. Sometimes I would edit it. Sometimes I wouldn't. And then she would send it off through BoxFox. So a little bit of both, but I like personal touches of handwritten things, whether it's myself or BoxFox doing it.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. Cool. All right. Tamika was asking, do you have a sample of what kinds of questions you would ask on your onboarding, specifically to get an idea of what kind of gifts to send to the clients? Like how specific, I guess, were you asking clients about their interests so you'd have a good idea for those gifts?
Yeah, I was mainly because I use a platform like BoxFox, I knew what kind of items were in there. So it depends on where you're getting client gifts from. So in there, if you guys are familiar with the platform, it's like a lot of like stationery. They have like snacks. They have like self-care, like bath bombs and things like that. So those are like my three categories. I was like, do you prefer snacks and treats? Do you prefer stationery? Do you prefer self-care, or do you not have a preference? And then they would select from there. And then I would build the gift around that. So not too much there. I would obviously ask their mailing address in your onboarding form, because a lot of times when you get their address in a proposal, it's like their billing address. And sometimes that's not where they actually want to receive things. So I would ask their mailing address, and then I also ask their birthday, because I want to always send my clients a birthday card or even just a message or a text. Like I want them to know I'm always thinking of them. So I also ask them when their birthday was.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I see a lot of users that I work with asking for client birthdays. I know that's very common for Dubsado users to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Sharon was asking about where do you get some subcontracts from? So Sharon, if you want to stick around for office hours, I can show you visually in the Dubsado account, but subcontracts are just one kind of form that you can have in Dubsado. So if you head to templates and then forms, you'll see there's a column there for subcontracts. If you haven't created one yet, what you might do is actually in that same page, so templates, forms, go to the template library, and you can actually filter by form type. So if you wanted to see an example of a subcontract, you can actually grab one of those sample templates and add it to your account. Now, depending on your industry, you may not see a subcontract that lines up to your exact industry, but seeing some of those examples can be really helpful, because then you could just customize it for your own industry and you can add it to your account. It'll take a lot of that time away from having to customize a form, since it's kind of already there. The bones of it, the scaffolding of it will already be there. That'd be a really good place to get started. Maybe she was asking about wording though. Taryn, do you have any recommendations on how to get going for wording, or is this sort of the thing that's just trial and error? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really depends on what you want to use them for. Sometimes people will use them for design proofs and things like that. Like if you're sending, logos, if you're a logo designer and you want to send those to see how your client's feeling about them, get them sign off on them. It really depends on the purpose. I hadn't seen a client expectations agreement when I made mine. I just kind of like had the idea because I was having a lot of issues with that part of my process. And I was like, how can I make this this better for not just me, but for my clients. And then I like looked into sub agreements because I was like, well, I can't send another contract and I want them to sign off on it. And that's the difference with sub agreements and contracts and like forms, like onboarding forms, is you can't have a sign. Like if you want someone to sign off or initial, it needs to be in contract form. So that's why I started using subcontracts. So it really just depends on like what you want to use them for. But definitely, you know, like I'm pro AI. I know people have feelings on it, but like if you are creating a subcontract for something, put into good old chat GPT, like what kind of questions should I be asking in a subcontract for client expectations, and see what populates. Like I love using it for that kind of stuff just to get my brain going.
Totally. And while you were talking, it dawned on me that I realized in Dubsado, we actually use two slightly different terms for the same thing. Sometimes we say subcontract and sometimes we say sub agreements. Those are the same thing. So apologies for any confusion there. For anybody who may have been wondering, like, well, you said subcontract, sub agreement.
Yeah.
So in templates forms, I believe it says sub agreement. So don't let that get crossed up. All right, this should be the last Q&A question for now. I haven't checked back in the chat in a second here, but LaShonda was saying, as a birth worker, I have 3 different packages: birth and postpartum, etc. Do you recommend that I do different client gifts for each one, since each one has a different price or a tier for that matter? Or do you think Taryn, do you think it's really going to be more just per client and not so much based on the package? How would you go about that situation?
Yeah, it depends on how different the pricing is. And then also, I mean, I feel like those are like all different levels of like stages, you know, so like what you give might be different per those different services. So I think it would just kind of depend on those things of like the price point, and then also like what the service like fully includes, to make sure that the gift is like appropriate. You know what I mean? So like I had a client, for example, it's like normally I would do a certain gift for someone that's more like stationary and things like that, but she was having a baby. And so I used Fox and used like the baby items that were in there and sent those to her, and something that was like, you know, a bath bomb for her so she can like relax. And so it's like, that's where it's like really knowing your clientele and customizing it towards that. But it really just depends on like your business model and then the price point of those.
Totally. All right, cool. I know we're a little bit over time, but real quickly, Sharon had asked as well where she can find the details for office hours. It is right there in the chat. I can repost it again if anybody needs it. The Zoom link should be right there for y'all, starting in about 12 minutes. And then lastly, Grecia was asking, what system do you use for remembering birthdays? And I think here, actually, this one would be a perfect one for Dubsado. You could create a custom mapped client field to actually ask the client their birthday. Once they've answered that information on a form, it's saved to their client profile. Then you can even set things up like workflows to automatically remind you or send an email to your client for that matter, based off of that date if you wish to. Taryn, do you have any other ideas for remembering birthdays? Did you do anything else yourself when you were asking clients that?
Yeah. So I utilize, when I was working on one-on-one clients, I was using ClickUp at the time. So we created a calendar in there just so like we would get an alert when it was coming up, and we would look at that calendar for the month and be like, okay, we have like these client birthdays that are happening. So we could see them all in one place. Cause that's the only thing with like putting them in Dubsado is you're not necessarily seeing like all the birthdays in one place. And then I would use, I can't say her name out loud because she'll start talking, but I have an Alexa. And so I would plug them into there, and then it would remind me, because I got mom brain. I have to do that sometimes for families' birthdays and stuff like that too. So I just plug all birthdays into there, so then she can yell at me when it's her birthday in my office.
That's a fantastic idea. I love it. All right. With that, I think we've gotten through all of our Q&A. I just want to thank everyone one more time for being here, especially if you've been here all 3 days. Thank you very much for being here and asking such great questions. And I had a blast. Taryn, I think you had a blast. It seems like you did, at least. And just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And please, by all means, stick around for office hours in about 10 minutes if you want to get some more questions answered. But it's been a blast. So
yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. Educating is like one of my favorite things. And especially because I don't work one-on-one with clients in this capacity anymore, of like working in Dubsado. I love talking about this because client experience is so important. It's something I'm so passionate about. And I'm really excited for you guys and to see your success. So would love to see as many of you guys as possible at office hours. It's just a great time to connect with other people. Even if you don't feel like you have questions, a lot of times people will ask questions and everyone's like, I actually was thinking about that too. And it like sparks that. So definitely join if you can. It's just a great time for us to all be together.
Yeah. Office hours, very low pressure, very casual.
Yeah.
So come on by, hang out, get some questions answered. It'll be great. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll catch you guys on the next webinar series. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Bye
so
now.
much.